Then on Sports Central, we go over our next team prediction of this offseason, and it's going to be over the Ole Miss Rebels, a team that went 8-5 overall in the 2022 season. This was one of the top teams in the SEC last season, and this is a team that is emerging as a consistent contender in the conference. Looking forward to 2023. How will this team be in 2023, and could this team be even better in the 2023 season, as we'll be talking about here today. We'll be analyzing this team and predict their schedule game by game in this video. Let's get started with a quick recap of 2022. Once again, the record was 8-5, and this was a team that started the season 7-0. They were undefeated heading into the later part of October. They lost to LSU on the road. That was the first loss of the season. And I mean, it was a really strong start. I mean, 7-0. They didn't really play any significant opponents in the first 7 games. But we could tell at points in those first few games that defensively this team wasn't super strong. I mean, you consider the Tulsa game, got the win 35-27, but still allowed 27 points to a terrible Tulsa team. And then you consider the Vanderbilt win. It was a super dominant win, but you still allowed 28 there. Even the Auburn win allowed 34 there. And then, of course, the losses to LSU and then to Arkansas. Both of those really stick out in particular, allowing 45 to LSU and then 42 to Arkansas. I mean, overall, this was a consistent offense last season. It was just defensively came back to bite at points. I mean, down the stretch when this team really started to face some tough opponents like Alabama, and they lost to them by 6, which they still kept it close against a really talented Alabama team. It just kind of fell apart a bit down the stretch. Also lost to Texas Tech in the Texas Bowl 42-25, so allowed 42 points in that matchup as well. So kind of a bumpy finish to a good season for this team. Defensively, definitely improvements need to be made. I mean, it was promising at first through the first 3 games when you played Troy, Central Arkansas, and Georgia Tech, but all 3 of those teams are just not anywhere near the same level that Ole Miss is on. So, but still not a bad season, 8-5, and this is a team that is emerging once again as a consistent contender in the SEC. Let's look forward to 2023 now with your roster preview. So Jackson Dart's coming back. Same with Quinshon Judkins. This is an offense that is reloading a decent amount of key players here. The backfield looks pretty great. I mean, Judkins put up over 1,600 yards last season, nearly 1,700 total yards with 17 touchdowns. Keep an eye on him. He is quietly one of the best running backs in the country. Looking forward to 2023. I mean, this backfield in general was incredibly strong. You consider Zach Evans in there as well, which you do lose Zach Evans. He is gone, but the 2 running backs between Judkins and Evans combined for over 2,700 yards of offense last season, 27 touchdowns. I mean, this was a strong offense last year. The receiving core, you do lose Malik Heath. Jonathan Mingo is also gone. So your top 2 wideouts are gone. You do have Jordan Watkins coming back. Dayton Wade's also coming back. So the receiving core has got some decent depth. There are a couple of key losses, though, offensively, which you would expect out of most teams. Defensively, though, I mean, considering this wasn't a very good defense last season, I mean, they're still losing several of their key players. You lose 2 on the D-line, 2 linebackers, and then 5 in the secondary. So the secondary especially is a bit of a concern. Looking forward to 2023. It's going to be pretty inexperienced. Not going to be too much depth back there either, even though this team definitely is adding several players from the transfer portal, which is a key factor. I mean, if this team wasn't able to add players from the transfer portal, I'd definitely be more concerned, but we'll get into that in a second. But, I mean, this is a team that is emerging as a consistent contender. You consider the past few years, I mean, this is a team that not too long ago was, you could say, a bottom feeder in this conference. I mean, from 2016 to even 2020, this was a bottom half team in the conference, and then 2021 got 10 wins, went to the Sugar Bowl in 2021, and then of course last season got up to 8-5, which is still a pretty good season. It's just a matter of whether or not this team can get it done in the biggest games, the ones that matter the most against the best teams, for this team to make themselves a true national contender. I mean, last season they got it done against the teams that they should have beaten. I mean, you consider the first 7 matchups, all of those they should have won, and they did. Then you go on the road to LSU, lose that game by 25. The Alabama game, which was very close, by the way, could have won that one. If you could have won that game against Alabama, I really think this team still could have been a big national contender, because then you got a ton of momentum heading into the Arkansas game and even the Mississippi State game, both of which that were winnable, even though not stunning losses. Honestly, the most surprising loss you might say was the Texas Tech one to finish out the season in the Texas Bowl, but even Texas Tech, I think for a good chunk of last season, was pretty underestimated. So it was a disappointing finish to the season, but point being, I think this team is heading in the right direction. The future is bright for this team. How far can they go in 2023? I mean, the talent is there for this team to remain a contender. It's just a matter of whether or not, once again, they can get it done in the biggest games, say against LSU and Alabama. But your transfer portal and recruiting now, Walker Howard is coming in from LSU to add more depth to the quarterback situation. Luke Altmaier's off to Illinois. It looks like he's going to be the starting quarterback of the Illini next season. Spencer Sanders, you got him coming in from Oklahoma State. So there's going to be some good depth in this quarterback situation. I mean, Spencer Sanders, starting quarterback the past few years, he's got experience with Oklahoma State as the primary starter. So we'll see what this quarterback situation looks like. It seems as if Jackson Dart is going to be the primary starter, but Spencer Sanders going into Ole Miss is definitely an interesting move. He is a guy that definitely had success with Oklahoma State. Then you got Caden Preescorn coming in, tight end from Memphis. Trey Harris coming in from Louisiana Tech. He's a receiver. Both of them could be starters in 2023. Victor Kern coming in, offensive lineman from Washington. Joshua Harris, defensive lineman coming in from NC State. And then Monty Montgomery, linebacker coming in from Louisville. As for more of the defense, Jeremiah Jean-Baptiste is coming in from UCF, linebacker. And then you got Austin Keys, who is off to Auburn. And then, of course, the secondary. I mentioned this is an area that definitely needs more depth. Zamari Walton coming in from Georgia Tech. And then John Saunders, both of them listed as starters on the depth chart right now. Expect both of them to have immediate impacts. And, of course, you do lose at the same time Miles Battle. He's off to Utah. Davison Igbinosun is off to Ohio State. So you do lose a couple of guys, the same with Markevius Brown, but at least you do bring in a few key players to replace their positions. Don't forget about Deshaun Gaddy either, coming up from North Texas, defensive back. Recruiting-wise, you are 23rd in the country, 10th in the SEC. Got 7 4-stars coming in, 8 3-stars. Recruiting not terrible. I mean, considering you're 10th in the SEC and 23rd nationally, I mean, it is just wild to think about that. The 10th ranked team in the SEC is still in the top 25 nationally. The SEC just a stacked conference recruiting-wise. But this team is in an 8 out of 10 on the future forecast meter. Once again, I think this team is very much heading in the right direction. I mean, it's now 2 seasons now that this team has been a contender. And I think 2023, that does continue here. I mean, there are definitely questions that need to be answered for 2023. But there is potential for the future for Ole Miss. And that said, let's take a look at the schedule now. So you got Mercer week 1, Tulane week 2, which, of course, Tulane last season, huge surprise team. That's a team that really came out of nowhere. Turned out to be a big contender. I mean, they were the best team in the group of 5 last season. Even beat USC in the Cotton Bowl, which is just insane. But Tulane, I do think they drop off a bit in 2023, but it's still a game to keep in mind. Then you got Georgia Tech at home, Alabama on the road to kick off the conference schedule. Then LSU at home on the 30th, Arkansas home, and then Auburn on the road, Vanderbilt at home, Texas A&M at home, and then you go to Georgia, home for Louisiana Monroe, and then Mississippi State on the road to finish out the regular season. So it's a much more balanced schedule than last season in that you do have your toughest opponents definitely sprinkled throughout. Last season, it was just game after game, tough opponents at the end of the season, while the beginning of the season was pretty easy. It's just different this season where you got Alabama in week 4, you got LSU after that, and of course Georgia on the road and Texas A&M in November. But looking at September here, Mercer, Tulane, Georgia Tech, all of those wins. I do think Tulane is a close game there. It is on the road. Tulane could be decent. I think they get to a bowl game again, but I don't see them being a big name team like they were last season. Georgia Tech, easy win, and then Alabama on the road. Alabama's going to be a tough one. I will say this, though. Alabama is going to be a vulnerable team in September. Honestly, if Ole Miss had Alabama at home in September, I might pick Ole Miss there. But I do want to favor Alabama just because in Tuscaloosa, tough place to play. It's going to be loud. And so I do think, Alabama is a team that is very questionable in areas as well. But I do think Alabama gets it done. So you're 3-1 heading into the second month. LSU at home. You got them at home, which is nice. But you're coming off of a tough Alabama loss on the road. And LSU next season could be a big contender. They got all signs pointing to them being great in 2023. So I do think you drop this one as well. You come back and you beat Arkansas in a close one. That was definitely a disappointing loss last season, losing to them on the road by 15, but you get it done this season. And then Auburn on the road. Auburn's a beatable team here. I do think next season they will be improved. I do like Peyton Thorne. I think Auburn's in a better situation than they were. So I'm going to say you do lose this game on the road here. Definitely a close matchup. It's winnable, but I'm going to take the Tigers in the end. Then Vanderbilt, take care of them, no problem, to finish out October. So you're 5-3 heading into November. You got a couple of tough games to start out November. I do think you beat Texas A&M. I do think the Aggies are improved in 2023. They were very disappointing in 2022. They should have been way better. So I do think Texas A&M is more like an 8 or 9 win team in 2023. Still not elite, but definitely a better team. So you get a nice win there against them at home, and then Georgia on the road. Georgia next season is going to be brutal. I mean, that defense is just incredible offensively. Offensively, that's a team that could be getting even better in the near future as far as recruiting goes. So Georgia has taken over as the true powerhouse of college football right now. They are definitely the main threat over Alabama, and I do think Georgia wins that game at home there for them. So a tough one there on the road, and then you come back, you beat Louisiana Monroe pretty easily, and then Mississippi State on the road. I do think you beat them this year. That was a game that you could have won last year for sure. It was at home, Thanksgiving, and I think it's on Thanksgiving again this season. So it's on the road. So you do go on the road there, but I do think you get it done. I think Mississippi State is actually going to be one of the worst teams in the SEC this season. Just nothing looking great for them right now. So I do think you're 8-4 next season, which honestly is a pretty good season. It gives you a chance to get up to 9 wins. Plus, it is a tough schedule. Alabama, LSU, Georgia, you got to play all 3 of them. It's going to be difficult for this team at times, and even, you can't sleep on the Texas A&M game, the Auburn game, the Tulane game either. So it is a difficult schedule. I think 8-4 is a good record for this team. As for the range, I'll say 10-2 is the ceiling, 6-6 for the floor. So I've got you going to a bowl game no matter what. Once again, I think this is a team that is very much in a good place right now with Lane Kiffin as the coach. I think this team is going to be a consistent contender for years to come. Obviously, the SEC having changes coming soon with Texas and Oklahoma joining. So you got 2 teams that have got excellent recruiting. They could be contenders as well for all we know. So, for Ole Miss, it's only going to get tougher from here. But I do think the recruiting, the coaching, this is a team that definitely has got a high ceiling for the future and definitely a team with upside. I've got 8-4 for 2022. So still not a bad season, but the future is bright. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on Ole Miss, and I appreciate you guys all watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.